so it's Conservative first.
Well, I think it's unfair on the other candidates if I occupy the whole of my 5 minutes because I already had some time. I will be very brief. First of all, as I said in response to the previous question, I don't think central government or MPs should decide how local government is structured. I think people of particular places should decide that, and I'm perfectly happy either way. As I say, Wiltshire works perfectly well. I think Dorset works perfectly well. I disagree profoundly with the people who think that West Dorset District Council is a disaster. I suspect they may find that they will look back on it and find that it was much better than they thought. And I'm perfectly aware that's unpopular in this room, but I suspect you'll find that there are many other people in West Dorset who agree with it. I do want to correct two misapprehensions, which are really important. First of all, there was a lot of comment on planning and planning committees, and God knows, in every place I've ever been in West Dorset, there are people who complain about planning decisions on all sides. The planning committee of West Dorset is a committee, and it's not a cabinet, and it's cross-party. So you were complaining about the very thing which you went on to say we needed to create in other spheres. And I beg you to consider that, because I don't think that turning from a committee system, cabinet system into a committee system, while it may be a perfectly reasonable thing to do, is suddenly going to deliver nirvana. There are corresponding advantages and disadvantages of each system. And I think that is also true with the unitary arrangement. I do want to say one last thing about the independent question, because the gentleman over there from Parish Council was talking about independence, and I think the lady from the back as well. And as it happens, I have a great deal of sympathy with the idea of independence running for and gaining office in local government. As it happens, we have an independent police commissioner. I'm probably not meant to say this because he's not a Conservative, but actually I think he's a rather good police commissioner. He was elected overwhelmingly as an independent, and he proved that it's perfectly possible to stand as an independent and be elected if you have the right platform and the right personality and so on. There is nothing to stop that happening, and that's what democracy is about. And if independents wish to stand, they should stand. You can't end up by having a party of independents, because the whole point of them, if they're genuinely independent, is that they're genuinely independent. So they'll be different from one another, but you can perfectly easily have an independent standing in each and every place, and why not? And with that, I will hand over to others.
Good evening, everybody. It's apt, isn't it, that we're holding this meeting in the week in which the House of Bishops, in their pastoral letter in relation to the general election, described our political system as almost moribund. And they appealed for a broad vision of hope and idealism to come forward. My goodness, if the views expressed this evening and the critical comments about how politics is done in West Dorset is anything to go by, we are in bad need of that kind of vision of hope and idealism. We have a massive democratic deficit. It isn't just the economic deficit that is the issue of our times, it's the democratic deficit. We've looked at one possible solution, unitary authority, and I think it's certainly worthy of investigation. However, I don't think we must get too optimistic about its potential for anything other than maybe saving some money, unless some other fundamental changes are made. The key one is changing the voting system. We have councillors sitting in our chambers, particularly in the county council, who are sitting there on the basis of, if you do the maths, about 10% of the potential vote. They've been elected in elections in which about the turnout was 30%, of which they themselves gained 30% of the votes. Now, that is not effective democracy. We need to look at the reasons for that and engage people. By engaging people, we need to encourage people to feel empowered. We need to lower the level at which decisions are made in our system. As has already been said by a number of people this evening, town councils and groups of parish councils are capable of making highly informed, key local decisions. And we need to look at how we can devolve power. But we're living through times when local government funding has been cut by 30%. And we also need to restore spending power. There's no point having devolved power unless if you have one hand tied behind your back. And we need to be able to address this issue of restoring decision-making power and spending power to local level. So fair votes, subsidiarity, as this devolution of power is called, and much more political engagement, changing the political culture. I just want to pick up a couple of things, if I have time, that have been said this evening, where our views were requested. The question of Neville's point about independence vis-à-vis political parties. This is a complex one because I think, again, if you look at our political party system at the moment, it is part of the problem. We do not have a level playing field. We have parties which are funded by hedge fund managers signing £500,000 checks and others struggling to get money from their members. That is not democracy either. We need to look at ways in which we can alter a culture in which promises are broken continuously as soon as groups of politicians get into power. We must have more public trust. But parties, nevertheless, have their place, I think. I think if we left the scene open just to independence, you would have a problem of the powerful, the wealthy, being able to exert more influence than ordinary people who do not have a kind of wider financial backing to exert their power on the local stage. So we have to look very carefully at it. I think it has, what Neville and others have been saying has some really important substance to it in terms of people being locally known and informed and trusted. But parties have come about because sometimes there is a need for solidarity to challenge vested interests. Thank you. I think I'm going to, if I've only got 20 seconds, I'm going to stop there. Thanks very much for listening.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm standing on behalf of the Labour Party. I'm not going to make a speech. I'm just going to pick up on some of the points that we've been listening to tonight and just offer my view. I think we've been talking about two completely different issues, but I'm not actually sure that either of them have got to the nub of the problem. As Oliver's already said, unless national government suddenly decides to impose structural changes, which is highly unlikely, the structure of local government's primarily a matter for local government itself. So to be honest, I think that the fact that you've got 5 parliamentary candidates sitting here is a complete distraction. You shouldn't have us here at all. You should have the cabinet because they're the people that need to listen to what you're saying. I'll go down now. There seems to have been some really careful analysis of what the problem here is, which is one-party rule, but I'm not sure that we've really got to the answer, because it's really unclear to me how in a first-past-the-post world the current structure is undemocratic. You've got 43% of the votes, 67% of the seats. They're going to make the decisions, whatever structure you've got. The real problem to me seems to be about transparency. And I'll explain that in a moment. To give you an example, I sit on a management committee at Weymouth and Portland, where the largest group, which is currently the Labour group, only has 4 of the 10 seats. Sometimes the largest group manages to get its policies through, but that's only ever with the support of members from different groups, and sometimes we're outvoted. For example, on our recent council tax consultation, the Tories and the Lib Dems all voted together, and we didn't manage to get our policy through. This amount of, as Oliver's already said, this amount of discussion is very, very time-consuming, and it modifies the policies. Now, if you're sitting in a management committee situation where one group, which would currently be the Conservatives, have got a majority, you're not going to get a proper discussion. You're going to have a faux discussion, and eventually they're all going to vote the same way, and you're going to get the same outcome as you would have done without the discussion. I'm sorry to be so negative about this, but it's true. There's nothing to stop them from consulting with everybody now. They don't. And they won't consult properly afterwards because actually they don't want to consult. They just want to do things how they want to do them. And that's what I mean about the problem being transparency. It's quite possible for West Dorset District Council to film their cabinet meetings, to have them online, to publish all the information, to discuss wisely, consult, and they don't. And the reason they don't is because they want to do things their way. So the transparency is the issue, not necessarily the structure, because you can change the structure all you want, but unless you vote in different councillors, you're not going to solve the problem. And so to me, the solutions would be, if you really want broader representation, you should either be campaigning for some kind of proportional representation to make sure that the council's a bit more pluralistic, or you should be encouraging people to vote for different parties so that you might end the current Tory hegemony. And to be honest, if people distrust what the cabinet as much as you say they do, presumably those people won't be elected again next time around, and then you'll be able to change it. But I think we need to remember that diversity and representation aren't just about political parties. It's also about encouraging people from a wide range of different backgrounds to participate in the democratic process. I'd just like you to take a quick look around the room and tell me whether you think that the people in this room are a fair representation of the people that live in the Bridport area. Do they represent you are you representative in terms of age, in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of social status, in terms of economic status? I'm hesitant to guess that you're probably not. And so democracy is also about encouraging young people as well as elderly, working people as well as retired people, people from different backgrounds, from different interests. And the current way that West Dorset District Council operates prevents that because the majority of the meetings happen during the day. And so consequently, people who work during the day can't be a councillor, which means that you've constantly got people who are retired or independently wealthy making decisions on behalf of the broad section of the community. And that's not democratic. Right, I'm going to pick up very quickly on independence. Political parties give you... independence, great if you've got time to look into all your candidates. Political parties give you an idea of the values of the candidate. You know Oliver's going to be in favour of privatisation, hedge funds, rich people. I'm going to be looking at employee rights, supporting people who've got no money, looking for housing for people who haven't got any. David... Well, I have no idea what David stands for. Sorry about that. Apparently, I've got to stop now, which is very sad, because very, very undemocratic, because I was going to talk to you about unitary authorities and how you need to be really careful what you wish for. That man over there was completely right, because if you have a unitary authority, all that money is going to be sucked into the statutory provision of children and elderly care. And children and elderly care is great, but I think from listening to you that you want some other provision as well. You need to be really careful before you decide that that's the answer. Transparency is your answer. Transparency is what you need to be looking for. Transparency is what you haven't got.
Okay. It's always the way. The Greens and Labour have taken my best lines. I wanted to talk really about four things, and I wanted to broaden the discussion away from just being about the district council to power and how it operates in general. So I wanted to talk about people, about political parties, about processes, and about power. Because what we know about power, wherever it operates, at whatever level of government, is it likes a closed system. It likes exclusivity. It likes to be supported by vested interests, and it fears dilution. It fears transparency. And the reason why I want to talk about people is because no matter what your values and no matter who you vote for, unless the person that you vote for respects your role as their electors, then you are in danger of their loyalty to their party being more important than their loyalty to you as their electors. And the process that we have of government at whatever level won't protect you against that. And this, I think, is what has happened, certainly in the district council, that people have been elected who assume the mantle of power and then become divorced from what ordinary people who've elected them want. And I know that many people would say that that's the same about national government too, and it's why I think we do have, as I look, and I've been interested in politics for years, I've taught politics, I've lectured in politics, if you look at the opinions, the view of politics and politicians, what you will see is this extreme cynicism by ordinary people. Our democratic process is no longer working for us, and we desperately need to shake it up. And what we've seen in West Dorset, I think, is something that you could refer to as government by contempt, and it has been enabled and abetted by the cabinet system, and I think in Parliament also, individual MPs are lobby fodder to a whipping system where there is lack of freedom of choice. And what I would like to see is a return to free speech and to MPs and to local councillors who are prepared to stand up and say, well, actually, I don't agree with that. I know I'm a member of your political party, but I don't think that's right. And I'm going to act according to my conscience and say that I don't think that's right. And we don't have that anymore. It's also part of a national malaise, and I think our national malaise is keeping ordinary people away from power. People feel that their political issues aren't addressed by the political class, and they struggle with the impact of poorly made decisions on their lives. And they feel as though they're bystanders. Most people feel that that's not what they want to happen. And I think that actually in local government we should be making the difference, because I think local government has got to show the way as to how we can reform this system. I particularly want to see a different kind of voting system in local government. I think that way we can show that you can have a plurality of people around the table, engaging, talking. I don't agree with Rachel in that I think we should encourage as many people to be involved in the debate as possible. Sometimes it is possible. I sit on the county council, and sometimes it is possible by the quality of your argument to change the opinion of somebody who sits on the opposite benches of you. And that kind of answers perhaps the question that was raised at the back about select committees, that sometimes, with proper investigation, proper discussion, you can work across party lines, because I think the biggest problem with this isn't just transparency, it's tribalism. If people could work together to find common sense solutions to problems in which they brought their strengths as individuals as well as the great parts of their value systems as politicians, then we could be moving forward on coherent ways of solving problems that people agreed with. Let's take as an example, the recent reforms in the NHS, most of which I particularly don't agree with. But when you reform something like that, you need to have a sort of a commission that involves all of the parties, because it's such a huge issue that you have to have a level of consensus. And at the moment, what we have is divide and rule. We don't have any kind of consensus politics. The final thing I wanted to say, and I agree with everything about changing the voting system, more ordinary people standing as independents, people getting involved, devolving decision-making right down to the bottom. I would like to see a unitary authority and more empowered parishes. But we need to remember that by and large, we get the politicians that we deserve. And the last point that Rachel made was the last point that I wanted to make. And it's a question, really. And the question is, what about the people who are not here tonight?
Thank you. We'll now find out where you stand.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for coming along here this evening. You're not going to hear about my party's policies this evening because we've been told not to talk party politics. What I am going to do is raise a couple of points, as other people have, that have been mentioned from the floor. Planning has come into a hell of a knocking session. Well, to my knowledge, twice in the past 5 years, the government has changed the emphasis on planning. Mr. Pickles at one stage said, all planning authorities will be based locally. And the next we hear that decisions about wind turbines are now being taken back in central London. We think that is totally wrong. If people want wind turbines at Charminster, Slyers Lane, then that should be for those people who are going to see that, and not for people sat in the London ivory towers. Does the committee system work? Well, there are many people here who say it doesn't work. One of the criticisms of the committee system is that it actually slows procedure down. My view is if the committee works slowly, it is the chairman who is at fault. The chairman has the authority to speed things up, providing he has the will and the ability. Or she, or what have you. But certainly, it is up to the chairman. I would also add two items that I think have displayed that our own Dorset County Council has lacked foresight and planning themselves regarding Dorset Waste Partnership and also the amalgamation, if that's the right word, of West Dorset, Weymouth and Portland, and North Dorset. Originally, they forecast it would cost £100,000 to pay for the staff movement and the necessary bonuses or terminations of people who weren't going to be employed in this new environment. That £100,000 was, I'm told, the basis of one of the financial arguments to justify this move. That has now risen in 3 years to £800,000, and the suggestion is it ain't finished rising yet. Now, if you've got a system of government, local government, that allows that to happen, then that system must be wrong. But no one seems to be accountable. We've been told time again about local elections, whether we should have local elections, whether the local elections should be on a party basis or on independent basis. Local politics should be for local people. And I see no reason why people have to go in for these elections based on party politics. I would like people to stand on their own merits. Think of two MPs who were elected quite a few years ago now because they had real public support. Bell being one, the reporter of the white suit, and a doctor, a surgeon from East Anglia, who wanted to stand up for his Worcester. It doesn't matter where, but we all perhaps remember that there was a doctor who said, I'm fighting the closure of my hospital, and he won on that basis. So there are two people who eschewed going for party politics. They won their seat by personality, voting for an independent. I do think that that should be given merit, but we need to encourage people to stand as councillors. And I think that the Green Party, the same as UKIP, we haven't been going that long, and we would find it difficult, I would think, we would find it difficult to actually find local people who are prepared to stand for councillors. The other parties have been going for a long time. My time is now up. Thank you again.
Thank you. Look, thank you very much, everyone.